And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Tonight's weather showing low pressure here pushing in toward the southwest coast with rain extending from the Yukon Delta all the way down into the Alaska Peninsula. Gusty winds and showers here for the east central Aleutians over that trough swinging east-southeastward. And look for some areas of light rain and snow here over the northwest part of the state. High pressure drying out Kuskokwim Valley there, Norton Sound eastward to the Yukon River, and southward into south central Alaska with lingering showers, though mainly over the Chugach Mountains. Otherwise, just isolated showers for the Alaska Range. And the southeast coast, rain over the southern panhandle as this low tracks east-northeastward and weakens considerably, staying dry to the north. And then for tomorrow, a weak low here off the north coast, so a chance of showers all across the southeast coast, all light here. Probably as far north as about Juneau, any farther north there up toward Haines, Skagway, Inland Canal there, and back toward Yakutat, staying dry. Partly sunny skies in store for the south central Alaska into the Kuskokwim Valley, all the way up there towards Selawik and Ambler. Isolated snow showers for the Alaska Range, and even less of a chance, more isolated for the Arctic coast. This low center kind of stuck along the southwest coast there with the rain being held from the Kuskokwim Mountains westward and then extending southward there at the front as this trough dives southeastward. Rather gusty northwest winds, maybe as high as possibly 40 miles an hour. Otherwise light wind conditions with rain for the Alaska Peninsula and some light rain possibly reaching southwest Kodiak Island. And then for Saturday, more rain into Kodiak, periods of rain over the southwest interior, east and to the north, partly to mostly sunny skies, and chance of showers for the southeast coast. And for the coastal water forecast on the south coast here, west winds 10 to 15 knots, west northwesterlies at 10 to 15 knots on the north coast. Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay northwest at 20, Stevens Passage northwest at 10, and southwest 15 for Clarence Strait with 7-foot seas. And the inside waters on Saturday, first day of the weekend, looks like they'll be strongest here for Lynn Canal out of the southeast, but only 15 knots. Otherwise, south to southeast winds at 10 knots for the central and southern interchannels. And the south coast, west-southwest, 10 knots. Variable winds, 5 to 15 knots here for the, or 5 to 10 knots for the north coast. Prince William Sound, west winds 10 knots on Friday. Cook Inlet, westerlies 10 to 15 knots all the way down to Kamishak Bay. For the North Gulf Coast and Barren Islands, west winds 15 to 20 knots. And for Saturday, small craft advisory for the Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, east-southeast winds 25 to 30 knots, northeast at 15 to 20 for Cook Inlet. North Gulf Coast, east-southeast 15 to 20 knot winds, and east at 15 for Prince William Sound. Kodiak Island, Friday, south at 20 knots, seas of 4 feet, and for the Alaska Peninsula, variable winds at 10 to 20 knots, and for Bristol Bay, southeast winds at 20 knots. And for the day Saturday here, the Alaska Peninsula, west winds at 15 to 20 knots here, and for the Bristol Bay zone, southwest at 15 knots, Kodiak Island, south winds 25 knots with 8-foot seas. Eastern Aleutians, all the way west here to about Adak, looking at northwest winds 25 to 30 knots with seas 7 to 13 feet. And for the western Aleutians, northwest winds 15 to 25 knots. And for the western Aleutians on Saturday, west northwesterlies 10 to 15 knots. West winds 25 knots for Adak, Atka, on over toward Nikolsky, turning northwest or west-northwest at about 25 knots there for an Alaska Island. And the southwest coast here, south of Nunivak Island, winds will be south at 15 knots with 5-foot seas. Small craft advisories, though, for St. Lawrence Island and the Yukon Delta coast. Northeast winds there at 25 knots. And 30-knot north winds at St. Matthew Island turn northwest as they blow across Kodiak, or St. Paul and St. George Islands with seas up to 11 feet. And for Saturday, Pribilof Islands, north winds 25 knots, winds seas around 10 feet, northwest at 25 for St. Matthew Island. North to northeast winds 10 knots for the southwest coast. Norton Sound, east winds at 25 knots. And for the Chukchi tomorrow, north to northeast winds 15 to 20 knots, north at 10 for the western Arctic coast, and west northwest winds 10 to 15 knots for the eastern Beaufort Sea coastline. And then for first day of the weekend up here, Picking the winds up there on the eastern side of the eastern coast, they're up to 25 knots. Otherwise, central coast, west winds 5 to 15 knots. And for the Chukchi Sea, winds east at 10 to 15 knots.